And I think that's a very good segue for us to get into, I guess, what you're focusing on now as a partner at NextView Ventures. I guess
Right.
for our audience who may not be not that familiar with that already, can you just share a little bit in terms of your investment focus, thesis,
Yeah.
check size, and so on and so forth?
Yeah. So so NextView, we've been around for 10 years. We're currently investing out of our fourth fund that we closed last year. A fourth fund is a $100 million fund that we do mainly North America investments. We're stage focused and pretty broad thematic focus. So we are only do seed. So seed in the US is more of a spectrum as opposed to a distinct stage. At the early end, you can be two people with a deck, concept stage. On the other end, you're doing 100K or 200K a month in revenue, and you're not yet post product market fit. So the round size for seed in the US can be as low as 800K, $1 million for a pre-seed. People call it pre-seed companies, or it could be a $4 or even $4.5, $5 million rounds, which by the way is crazy because 10 years ago, $5 million rounds are Series A's. $3 million rounds were Series A's in the US 10 years ago. So we lead, we're the other thing to call out is we only lead investments. We don't do small follow checks. So our styles, we build strong conviction and either have very strong conviction and get involved in the business, take a board seat, get the ownership we want, and then we'll write a big check. So at the low end of the check size can be a couple 100K. At the high end could be 2.5 million. And what kind of companies do we invest? So we have a thematic focus that we describe as the everyday economy. So what that means is there are many different types of everyday users. When you and I are at work, we're the everyday worker, but we're not the only type of everyday worker. We can be the white collar worker. So we think about future of work. How do we work remotely? If you're a software engineer, we think about how you get work done, how you interact with GitHub, how you interact with feature releases, QA. You can be a data scientist, or you can be a non-technical user in the organization who wants access to data. So we think about data toolings. You can be a frontline worker like delivery drivers or 7-Eleven workers, and like how do you get trained? For example, just a few things that we've thought about in the past. And then everyday consumer, then we think about food, we think about health, we think about entertainment, we think about personal finance. How do you save money? How do you get rid of student debt? So we invest both at the application layer, meaning the products and services that touch the consumer or the everyday user directly, or we invest in the enabling technology layer, meaning you might not know that this is a company that powers the end action that impacts the everyday user life, but that's the enabling technology. So what we don't do, so you're like, okay, that's everything. So what we don't do is things I would call like, first of all, we need to see something that has technology leverage. So if you're a pure retail business or like pure hardware business, that's difficult for us. We have done hardware, software investments, but most of the time it is software technology leverage, or minimally has some kind of e-commerce element. And the other thing is, so things like 2 layers down the infrastructure stack, like, next generation database infrastructure, or, cybersecurity is not very everyday consumer or everyday worker, things that are more traditional enterprise SaaS that sells directly to the CIOs of Fortune 100 companies. The B2B software investments that we make tend to be a little bit more bottoms up, or individual team adoption and then spread across, as opposed to top-down purchase decision making from a chief information officer or IT department. So that's kind of how I would categorize what we do and don't do.
Okay, and feel free to share maybe kind of like a few recent investments that you have done with us, so that people can sort of like relate, and who knows, maybe they're even co-investors within this.
Yeah, so I'll call out a few later stage companies and I'll call out a few recent investments. We have a company called Skillz, SKILLZ. They just went public last year. They're a leader in API they're building APIs to power cash-based gaming. So let's say you're a mobile developer of a bowling app, and you can enable cash gaming, like me and you competing in the bowling app and see who wins, and we actually get a little cash prize by implementing their API. So they're now like, I don't know, like a $7-8 billion company in the public market. We are investors in another company that just went public recently called ThredUp. This is a company that is in the re-commerce space. So what that means is that recircular e-commerce. So they sell secondhand, mostly kids and women's clothes. And they also just went public. I think it's like $1.5 billion, $2 billion market cap business. We are in a company called Attentive Mobile. They're a New York-based company. They're a leader in SMS-based marketing. So in the US, unlike in Taiwan or China, you don't actually, the SMS marketing landscape is still pretty nascent. So you don't get 1,000 texts on your phone from random people. And brands and retailers are just starting to leverage that channel. In the US, SMS or text is very private until very recently. So Attentive does a good job of helping brands and retailers build that relationship with their consumers through text. So they're kind of the enabling marketing layer that powers that. So those are like a few later stage examples. And now another fun one, this company called Whoop, which is a advanced fitness tracker. So if you watch golf, you actually have seen them on PGA tours, because a lot of golfers, they're kind of the official wearables for PGA. And I think on the broadcasting, you can actually see, they basically have the most advanced heart rate tracking in the industry. So it's more of a software play, but they sell a piece of hardware, but their business model is actually more like a software business, because you sell subscription, and it helps you track recovery and sleep. So a lot of athletes, from LeBron James to a bunch of other folks, have used them, not on a sponsorship, just used them. And then they're now going down market to kind of the everyday consumer, but they started more pro athletes because it helps them train, kind of manage their training. So that's on the later stage side, that companies we invested like a decade ago are now kind of, matured. A few recent investments that I personally worked on. I did a company called FAM, F-A-M. This is a consumer social side. They're building a video-centric, Gen Z-focused social network. I mean, social network is a really hard category to invest because you just don't know. But this team is really impressive, and they haven't announced it, but they just closed a $15 million Series A. Another two that are slightly different. One is a company called Prequel, Prequel, prequel.co.co. What they're doing is basically implementing data infrastructure stacks from extraction to warehousing to transforming to the BI and visualization layer, very easy with a bundled out of the box solution, so that you can get your data stack, infrastructure stack up and running, hopefully in minutes, not in weeks. So you can focus on getting the insights and focus on building the software you need to build. So this is a pretty recent investment. And then last one, also pretty recent, is a company called HomePace. So HomePace, what they do is they allow you to take some money out of your home by sharing, kind of like a co-ownership agreement, by co-sharing the eventual upside of your home if one day you were to sell your house. So let's say I'm a 60-year-old retired couple, and I've been in my house for 20 years, and I have some paper gains, but I don't want to leave my house, but I want to put more money into my retirement account, but I also don't want to take on more debt. So I can basically it's kind of like a European put option for those who are in finance. So you can structure an agreement so that HomePace become a co-investor in your home, and you get you say $50,000 or something cash upfront, but then eventually when you sell, you share a little bit of upside and downside. So the concept here is that a lot of, it enables a lot of financial flexibility, whether as a new homeowner who wants to buy a slightly more expensive home, or as a existing homeowner who wants to be able to unlock a little bit of home equity without having to sell or move.